9 bodies, torn tents, missing eyes, a severed tongue. In the dead of winter, 1959, deep in the Ural mountains of Soviet Russia, a group of experienced hikers vanished. When their bodies were found weeks later, the scene was so disturbing that Soviet investigators could only conclude a compelling natural force was responsible. But what kind of force crushes ribs like a car crash, rips out tongues, and leaves no trace of struggle? This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. The journey began with optimism. Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student at the Ural Polytechnical Institute, assembled a team of 9 hikers, 7 men and 2 women, all experienced in ski touring and mountaineering. Their goal was to reach Mount Otorten, a remote peak in the northern Urals. The expedition was classified as a Grade 3 hike, but the group was well prepared. On January 27, 1959, the team departed from Vizhay, the last inhabited settlement before the wilderness. One member, Yuri Yudin, turned back due to illness, a decision that would save his life. The remaining 9 pressed on, documenting their journey with photographs and diary entries that showed camaraderie, laughter, and confidence. By January 31st, they had reached the edge of a highland area and began preparing for the climb. On February 1st, they pitched their tent on the eastern slope of Kholat Shayak, a name that translates from the indigenous Mansi language as Dead Mountain. The decision to camp on an exposed slope rather than in the forest below remains one of the many puzzling choices made that day. That night, something went terribly wrong. Kholat Shayak wasn't just a mountain, it was a place steeped in indigenous legend. The Mansi people, native to the region, considered the mountain sacred and dangerous. According to their oral traditions, the area was cursed. Hunters avoided it. Stories spoke of spirits that punished trespassers and strange lights that danced across the sky. The name Dyatlov Pass was only given after the tragedy in honor of the group's leader. Before that, it was simply a remote, wind-blasted slope known for its harsh conditions and eerie silence. The Mansi believed the mountain was a place where the souls of the dead lingered. Whether a coincidence or fate, the hikers chose to camp on a site that local lore had long warned against. When the group failed to return, search teams were dispatched. On February 26th, rescuers found the tent collapsed and half buried in snow. It had been slashed open from the inside. The hikers had fled barefoot or in socks, leaving behind warm clothing, boots, and gear. Footprints led downhill toward a forested area. The first 2 bodies, Yuri and Gregory, were found under a cedar tree, stripped to their underwear. Nearby, remnants of a fire suggested they had tried to stay warm. Broken branches indicated someone had climbed the tree, possibly to look for the tent or escape something. 3 more bodies, Dyatlov, Zina, and Rustem, were found beneath the tree and the tent, spaced as if they had been crawling back. Slobodin had a fractured skull, but his injuries weren't immediately fatal. The remaining 4 were found 2 months later in a ravine, partially dressed in clothes scavenged from the others. Their injuries were far more severe. Lyudmila had her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips missing. Alexander and Nikolai had crushed ribs and skull, with trauma likened to a car crash. Yet, there were no external wounds, no signs of struggle, and no evidence of other people nearby. Some of the clothing contained traces of radiation. The victims' skin had turned orange, their hair appeared gray. The official investigation concluded that 6 died of hypothermia, while 3 succumbed to fatal injuries. The cause? A compelling natural force. But that explanation only deepened the mystery. So what really happened? Over the decades, dozens of theories have emerged, some grounded in science, others veering into the paranormal. Here are the most prominent. An avalanche. The most widely accepted theory today is that an avalanche forced the hikers to flee. In 2020, Russian authorities reopened the case and concluded that a slab avalanche, a sudden shift of snow, damaged the tent and triggered panic. The hikers, fearing a second avalanche, fled downhill and succumbed to the elements. However, critics argued that the slope wasn't steep enough for an avalanche, and the tent's location didn't match typical avalanche zones. Moreover, the injuries sustained by some victims were too severe to be caused by snow alone, and the footprints showed a calm, orderly retreat, not the chaos expected during an avalanche. Katabatic winds. Katabatic winds are sudden, violent gusts that can descend from mountain slopes with deadly force. These winds could have created a terrifying noise and pressure, prompting the hikers to flee. This theory explains the panic and the decision to abandon the tent, but doesn't account for the traumatic injuries or missing body parts. Infrasound. Some researchers suggest that a rare weather phenomenon known as infrasound, low-frequency sound waves caused by wind interacting with the mountain, could have induced panic. Infrasound can cause anxiety, nausea, and irrational fear. The theory persists that the hikers experienced mass hysteria and fled the tent in terror. While intriguing, this theory doesn't explain the physical trauma or mutilations. Military tests. One of the darker theories involved secret Soviet military experiments. The Ural Mountains were known for missile testing, and some speculate the hikers stumbled into a classified zone. The radiation, strange lights in the sky reported by other witnesses, and rapid closure of the area for 3 years lend weight to this idea. Could the hikers have been collateral damage in a weapons test? Some suggest parachute mines or sonic weapons caused the injuries. Others believe the government covered up the true case to avoid international scrutiny. Paradoxical undressing. A known phenomenon in hypothermia cases is paradoxical undressing, where victims remove clothing due to a false sensation of overheating. This could explain why some hikers were found nearly naked. However, it doesn't account for the trauma or the fact that others were wearing scavenged clothing, suggesting a more complex scenario. Animal attack. Some have proposed a bear or wolverine attack, but there were no signs of struggle, no bite marks, and no tracks. The tent was cut from inside, and the injuries were inconsistent with animal mauling. Mansi tribesmen. The indigenous Mansi people inhabit the region, and some theories suggest the hikers trespassed on sacred land. However, there's no evidence of conflict, and the Mansi were known to be peaceful people. Investigators ruled out this possibility early on. UFOs and the paranormal. The bizarre nature of the scene has fueled supernatural theories. UFO sightings were reported in the area about the time of the incident. Some believe the hikers encountered extraterrestrial beings or were victims of a paranormal event. Others suggest time vortexes, teleportation experiments, or Arctic hysteria. While these ideas were speculative, the lack of a clear explanation keeps them alive in popular imagination. The Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of the most enduring mysteries in Russian history. The hikers' graves in Yekaterinburg are visited by thousands each year. In 2019, Russia reopened the investigation, but the avalanche conclusion left many unconvinced. The case files were declassified, yet key documents remain missing. Theories continue to evolve, and amateur sleuths around the world pore over the evidence, hoping to find the missing piece. The mountain itself has become a symbol of mystery. Tourists now visit Dyatlov Pass, retracing the group's final steps. Whether psychological or supernatural, the aura of the place is undeniable. What if the truth was buried with the bodies? What if the Dyatlov group saw something they weren't supposed to? What if the real reason was covered up, not by snow, but by silence? Next time, on History, Biography, Mythology, we'll dive into the classified files, the survivors' testimony, and the strange coincidences that suggest this wasn't just a hiking accident. Because in the Dyatlov Pass, the dead don't speak, but the mountain might.